Morning everybody and welcome to Thursday's English lesson. Today we're going to look at how we can move action along with dialogue. So we're looking at speech, action, dialogue. Now if you cast your mind back to Holes, we did speech, action, dialogue when we did our conversation between the main characters, which I've completely forgotten the name of, Mr. Sir and Stanley. That's what it was. We did conversation with Mr. Sir and Stanley. So we have seen this before, but I'm going to go through it all again today. I'm going to show you how to draft your ideas for your speech bubbles, and I'm going to show you a model. And today we're going to create a conversation between Beowulf and King Arthur, not Arthur, Hrothgar. King Hrothgar. I don't know why I've written King Arthur. But before we start, 30 seconds to yourself. How many different words can you think of instead of using said? You did this with Mrs. Inwards back in September. Let's see what you come up with now. Okay, super. I'm sure you managed to come up with many different words for said. Said is boring. We don't want to hear said all the time. Maybe they argued, they shouted, they whispered, they murmured. Lots of different words that we can have for said. Now, what I want you to do, and you've seen this before, just to remind you, to look at these two different examples of speech and think about which one you prefer. Now, if you cast your mind back, I think it was Hamza and maybe Brooke or Phoebe, I can't remember, who did a little drama for this bit. So we did use it before. Which one of these is a better paragraph to have speech in? Do you like the first one that's short and to the point and only says what people say? Or do you like the second one that includes the actions that the characters are doing and gives some description about the scene? Have a think and then come back. Hopefully you'll agree with me that the second one over here is much better. Not only does it have the speech that the characters are using to interact with each other, but it gives us some actions. For example, replied Sam with fake pretense. We know how Sam is acting. Okay, we have some description about the room that they're in. It gives the reader a lot more information. So before we go on to writing our own description, action, dialogue, I just wanted to recap the punctuation that we need with our dialogue. So on the board we have, always remember to start the dialogue with a capital, explained Miss Major. See if you can have a think now about what punctuation I am missing and what punctuation you need to add in to make sure the sentence is punctuated correctly. Pause the video and give yourself 30 seconds to have a go. So hopefully you managed to pause the video and you've managed to have a go. On the screen here, you can see I've put the steps of success for punctuation speech, and I've edited the sentence that I have. So I need inverted commas for the bit that is spoken. I needed a comma before explained, and at the beginning of the bit of speech that is spoken, we need a capital letter. Hopefully that's reminded you of the speech. So, what you're going to do today is you're going to plan and write the description, action, dialogue to go with the part of the story where Beowulf first comes to Heorot and introduces himself to King Hrothgar. I'm going to read the part of the story that I'm referring to so you have it. So on your screen you should be able to see page 30 and 31. So you can see that Beowulf has just come to Heorot and he's being led to King Hrothgar. So I'm going to start from here. I am Beowulf, Prince of the Geats, nephew of Hygelac the King, and if you would kindly allow us to speak face to face with Hrothgar, your gracious king, we will explain to him in full the purpose of our sea-tossed journey to the land of the Danes. Wulfgar, the herald, was as wise in judgment as he was fierce in war, and led them at once into Heorot to meet Hrothgar, his beloved master, grey-haired, now with sorrowing. These men, grim though they may look in their mail armour, have come in peace. I am sure of it, my king, Wulfgar declared, before the king and his thanes. Chief among them, and the renowned Prince of the Gates, is the noble Beowulf, nephew of Hygelac, your friend and ally of a lifetime. Such a trusty man can only have come to help us, I think. Suddenly hope warmed in the old king's heart as he looked upon Beowulf standing there before him. And that's the section we're going to use. So what I want you to have a think about, we've got sudden hope warmed the king's heart as he looked up to Beowulf standing there before him. I want you to have a think about what the conversation now might be between Beowulf and King Hrothgar. Not King Arthur, King Hrothgar. What is that conversation going to look like? I imagine Beowulf is going to introduce himself in some way, and I imagine that King Hrothgar is going to say how glad he is that Beowulf is here. So what I want you to do is pause the video and to go and have a think about what those characters might be saying in this conversation. You can jot down some ideas to use later, or you can just have a think in your head, but if you take a couple of minutes now to think, and then you can come back and see my ideas, and then you'll have lots of time to think and write your model later. So I had to think about what that conversation might look like. So I've got Beowulf speaking. I stand here before you, the greatest warrior of all, ready to fight Grendel. King Hrothgar's going to respond by saying, I'm so glad you're here. Maybe now our nightmare will end. And then Beowulf is going to say, I have no doubt in my mind that I can defeat this beast and bring back your country. Now remember, we've already discovered that Beowulf is very arrogant. He thinks he can defeat a beast without any weapons. He's very sure of himself. So I think in this bit of writing, Beowulf has to come across as arrogant, and he has to come across as being very, very sure of himself. So when you think about it, when you think about what he's going to say, you have to bring that across. I also think it's really, really important for you to show how grateful King Hrothgar is for someone to come and help. Remember, Grendel has been murdering the people in his village for months and months and days and won't leave them alone. Okay, so what I want you to do now is to go onto the lesson and to bring up your own speech bubbles and to plan what Beowulf and King Hrothgar are going to say. And then I want you to come back and I'm going to model, although we've done it before, I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to go around the description, action, dialogue for you to write your speech. So it's really important that you go and plan your speech bubbles now, but that you come back to the video when you're finished to see the final activity. Off you go. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to plan what Beowulf, Hrothgar and Beowulf are going to say, and you've planned out that conversation. And just like we did for Holes with Mr. Sir and Stanley, we're going to make a paragraph out of that speech using dad sentences. And remember, that's description, action and dialogue sentences. So I've got my little document ready. I've got my description, action, dialogue, description, action, dialogue down the side. Just like when we did Mr. Sir, you'll see that I've put them in different orders, but they come in groups of 3, and in those groups of 3 we have a description, an action and a dialogue. So Beowulf has just come to Hereward. The page that was at the boat has brought him to see the king, and the king has, what did it say? It said, sudden hope warmed the king's heart as he looked up upon Beowulf standing there before him. So I need to start with a description sentence, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe what Beowulf does in that situation. So, without a second thought, Beowulf strode into Hereward's now depressing cold mead hall, removing his helmet. And I've made a point of saying that it's now a depressing place to be, because at the beginning of the story, the mead hall was described as loud and colourful and they had parties there every night, but instead now it's a depressing place to be because every night Grendel comes and he attacks the town. So I tried to have those contrasting pictures for the audience. Okay, so my next sentence is action, and I'm still going to talk about the actions that Beowulf is going to do. So, after lowering his head slowly into a bow, because he's in front of a king, it's respectful to bow in front of a king and to show your respect, Beowulf stepped back and slowly met King Hrothgar's gaze. He's not going to do it in an intimidating way. He is a guest in this town and he's going to be respectful of the king. Now, my next sentence, if I go back to my plan, is going to be that first speech bubble. So I'm going to have, with opening speech marks, I stand here before you all, the greatest warrior of all, ready to fight Grendel. Announced Beowulf. Oh. And I've not used said, I've used a different word. Now, what I should have been doing was ticking them off as I've gone. So I've got my description, I've got my action, and I've got my dialogue. Okay, now I'm on to the next speech bubble, which is all about King Hrothgar. And if I look at my checklist, this time to mix things up, I'm going to start with an action. So, because it's King Hrothgar that's going to speak, I'm going to start by giving King Hrothgar an action. So I'm going to have gratitude washed over King Hrothgar's face as he slowly rose to his feet. And I know by looking at my checklist, I'm going to put in the speech straight away. And I've got that speech rather straight from my speech bubble, and I've typed it in. So I'm glad that you are here, replied King Hrothgar with a sigh of relief. Maybe now our nightmare can end. And I can tick off action. Oh, I can tick off action. And I can tick off dialogue. So my last sentence is description. Okay, so and I'm going to describe how King Hrothgar shows his respect back to Beowulf. So King Hrothgar offered his hand to Beowulf, who took it proudly, and slowly every man in the mead hall rose to his feet. Okay, so again, I've got a bit of description. This time, my description includes everybody in the setting. Okay, so now I've run out of time to do the model live while showing you, but you can see that I have done my last 3 action, dialogue and description sentences. So for my action, I've got, although nervous, Beowulf stood tall as he responded. Then I've added in the speech that I planned. I have no doubt in my mind that I can defeat this beast and give you your country back. And then finally, I've added my last bit of description. There was a moment of silence before the mead hall erupted in cheer. So you now have to go and do that for the speech that you planned into your speech bubbles, writing your description, action, dialogue, sentences. I'm really looking forward to seeing them. You did so well last time we did them. They were absolutely amazing. So I've got no doubt that this time they'll be amazing too. Just remember, Beowulf is going to be arrogant, King Hrothgar is going to be appreciative and grateful. Go and have a go, and I really look forward to seeing what you come up with.